Hello everyone. Hello world. This is Shai Danon, straight from Israel, from the Golan Heights, and I'm here with Claire Edwards, straight from Vienna. Hi Claire, how are you doing?
Hi, Shai. It's nice to be with you.
Yes, same here. Um, well, in the past few months, I would say you become like an internet celeb because many people watched a fabulous interview you had with Age of Truth, I think, the channel, and they got to know you and your story. And obviously things doesn't stay as they are, so there's some developments to this story, and we are here to hear about the developments mostly. But for those who don't know you, if you can just trace back from the beginning, I mean, not to give us your CV or your bio, but just from who are you? I mean, how come a normal human being who likes his cup of tea and to watch the evening news and to read the newspaper suddenly become an activist against depopulation, against 5G technology, etc. I mean, what made you click or wake up and within couple of years or so, am I right? Couple of years, yes, since you
Yeah, yeah.
about,
Mm.
um, you're now fully awake, aware, and an activist, and even you can differentiate between the good sides and the controlled opposition sides within the truth movement. So I think this is very interesting for me and definitely for my viewers. So stage is yours, and obviously I will interrupt and I will interfere and throw some remarks in my Israeli abrupt way, and we hopefully have a good
Please
discussion.
do, please do.
So
Okay,
how?
so
What happened? Yes, yes.
briefly, I'll be as brief as I can. In 2015, I was working at the United Nations in Vienna, and they put up these public access points on the ceilings, and these were for Wi-Fi and for cell phones. And I
How
took in
long?
my,
Sorry, how long you've been working for the UN?
I was there for 18 years.
18 years. You just a
Yeah.
normal member worker for the UN, right?
Absolutely. I was working as an editor and a trainer. So they put up these public access points, and I took in my meter to measure electromagnetic fields, and it was completely off the scale. I
Right.
mean, it wouldn't even measure it. It was so off the scale. So I was very alarmed because these corridors were very tiny, very low ceilings, metal walls. So
Right.
this means that this bounces off the walls and
Sure.
onto your body multiple times.
Sure.
So it was really dangerous. So I brought this to the attention of everybody I possibly could, and everybody ignored me because nobody knew what I was talking about. And this included the medical service and the staff union in Vienna. And so for the next 7 months, I was ill with flu and cold, flu and cold, flu and cold. And I didn't put that picture together until way 18 months later. You
Mm-hmm.
know? But I decided to get out of there because it was such an unhealthy place to be. So I actually retired within 14 months of those things going up. I retired. But I didn't stop trying to get something done about it because I was really worried about the 4,000 staff in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, after having been ignored all that time, finally I heard last year on the 14th of May, the UN Secretary General was coming to speak to staff.
Mm-hmm.
And when you retire from the UN, you still have a grounds pass, so you can
Right.
go in and out as you wish. So I went in there and I addressed him about electromagnetic radiation, these public access points on the ceiling, and about 5G. And his response was to laugh, which I found highly inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
because I had really gone as far as I could to raise my concerns. But I mean, I can't sit there in a meeting of 200 staff and say people are dying, you know. So after that, I contacted the EMF Scientists Appeal of 2016 and the EU 5G Appeal of 2017. And I said, I've told the Secretary General about 5G, So he can't say he doesn't know because I've told him.
Sure.
And Professor Rainer Nyberg, who had done the EU 5G appeal, then wrote to me and said, can you help out with a new appeal, because we want to discuss also the issue of space. And I said, sure, I'm an editor, yeah, and I thought, oh, it'll take me a couple of weeks to edit that, and here I am, 22 months later, fully involved in this, so it really took me by surprise.
Yeah. Well, it does suck you in. I mean, the level of information, the depth, the history of it can suck you in, and then it becomes your world. I mean, I remember in the interview you've done previously, you said, and I really resonated with that when you start to explore or investigate the 5G story, and you understand, and then you go back to your life, it means you didn't understand, because you cannot find out what's going on and go back to your life as if you didn't learn anything. And once you learn about 5G, the sane reaction is to become an activist, is to get involved with your life and the life of your family in order to protect them from, tech giants, government officers, and the corrupt system that obviously is in place in almost every country, I would guess. So I really resonated with that, because the same happened to me. I started to learn about 5G and I was like, whoa, this is like, whoa, doesn't make sense, but let's explore it. And obviously I became an activist, and also this interview is part of it, and also suing the Israeli government for deploying 5G system in Israel. So I'm doing that as well with some other activists and the help of other donations and such. But it's not enough, and as we know, and we obviously reveal now to the viewers and listeners, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And the iceberg,
exactly.
The iceberg.
I mean, when I started looking at 5G and started working on the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space, I realized that it's a global agenda. I mean, this is all-encompassing. It's a global agenda, and the intention is to end life as we know it. This is the end of everything we've ever known. It's a complete transformation of everything. And yes, you have no choice but to work against this once you understand it.
So what happened to you with the Stop 5G Space Appeal? I mean, tell us what made you wake up now to what you know now.
Thereby hangs a tale. So I worked on the appeal for, I think it took us 5 months to publish it. And initially we were 4 authors. I wasn't planning to be an author, but I eventually became a part author to this thing and edited the whole thing and designed it. And I handled all the language versions and formatted all of those and administered them. Now, Lynn Wycherley was one of the authors, but she had to drop out because she was very ill. Professor Rainer Nyberg dropped out because he argued with Arthur Furstenberg. Professor Nyberg wanted to have the precautionary principle included in the text of the appeal, and I wanted to have a very significant space text included in the text of the appeal, and Arthur Furstenberg would have neither of these. So Professor Nyberg also left, and that left Arthur Furstenberg and myself to actually produce and publish the appeal. So we published it on the 19th of September 2018, and then it basically went viral. But you actually didn't see people getting into action until about, I would say, Easter last year. That's when I saw that it became visible. And I spent the whole of last year working on promoting the appeal. So, last year I started doing interviews for the first time. I've never done interviews before. I started writing articles for the first time. I've never written articles before. And I produced 8 newsletters last year. Then everything changed just before last Christmas. Because I was contacted by a lady in Croatia in October, and she said, "Oh, we need to do something. We need to do global protests." And I wrote back to her and I said, "Look, I'm far too busy because I'm international. I mean, the other thing I should explain is that I don't live in my own country. I haven't done for many, many decades. So I'm sort of outside everything. For a number of different reasons, I consider myself an outsider. I've lived in 6 different countries. I speak 4 languages, 2 of them quite badly. And so I'm not involved anywhere. I've always considered myself somewhat of a spectator, So I'm sort of outside cultures, outside countries. Yeah? So what happened was she contacted me and I said, "Well, look, I'm just far too busy with working on this 5G campaign to start organising that." But I put her in touch with a woman in the Isle of Wight in Britain. And then again, I just sort of forgot all about it and they got on with it. So the next thing I knew was that just before Christmas, this, whatever they were working on, had now turned into what was a group forming with a name. Yeah? And one of the people involved was a woman called Nicolya Christi. Now, this was a big red flag to me when I found out that she was involved. So what happened was, so as I said, I saw people getting into action in about April last year. Now, if you go back in time and you look at May last year, excuse me, on the 13th of May, you had the New York Times article, which was attacking Russia Today America, because Russia Today America had actually covered our appeal at the beginning of last year.
Right.
And then they went on to do 7 pieces on 5G.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So on the 13th of May, the New York Times attacked Russia Today America and said that the opposition to 5G was inspired by Russia. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, that was the launch of a global campaign of fake news from the mainstream media about the Stop 5G campaign.
Sure.
Yeah? Because I saw that go on, because as I say, I'm international, so I'm looking at the international scene. So I saw this same meme replicated around the world.
Yeah.
I saw it come out of Australia, come out of the UK, come out of France, and I was told it also came out of Poland. Yeah. So clearly, again, the global agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Then on the 31st of May, there was an article put out by something called Global Disinformation Index, and they were analyzing the pushback to 5G. So they were saying, oh, this many Facebook pages have started, so many followers, the number of followers increased over this period. So they did an analysis of the Stop 5G campaign. Mm-hmm. So also, when I started to look back, on the 31st of May also, this WorldShift was launched, but I didn't realize that until much later, so I'm going out of sequence here. Now in June, what happened in June was very, very interesting. So I and a colleague in Vienna were contacted by a filmmaker in Vienna, and we were offered a free website out of the blue. She then put a lot of pressure on us, and she wanted my name on the website, my name and address and telephone number on the website. and put a lot of pressure on us to get material on this website. And she had told us that this website would belong to us. So she would hand the whole thing over to us once it was made. And then it appeared that she wanted to keep control of it. So at this point, I thought, well, just a moment. This is a lot of German material. I don't know what's going to be going on there if it doesn't belong to me. So I could run into very big trouble here because somebody says something in a German article and I don't even know it's been said, but it's my responsibility. So we backed out of that and we said, no, thank you. You know, we want to have our own website. Also in June, I was contacted by Kate Keel, who's a very well-established US campaigner against electromagnetic radiation. And she invited me to this conference call with this woman called Nicolya Christi, who she said was an author or something. I'd never heard of her. And so I said, okay, yes, sure, you know, I'll join the conference call. And we were asked to submit bios, so we submitted bios, very short bios. And then at the very last moment, when I came to my computer to join this call, I saw that a new bio had been submitted at the very last minute.
Really?
Yes, called by somebody called Joe St. Clair. And he said that he was the UK director of the World Sustainable Development Forum. And he was very proud of having a very close working relationship with a former chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
But hang on, at that point, did you know what's the idea, what's the agenda behind climate change or behind sustainability or where it comes from? Did you know, or you just started to find out? I mean,
I knew enough. I mean, you know, if you go on the internet and you inform yourself, you know enough to know that sustainable development is widely regarded as a euphemism for depopulation. And you also know that the science behind the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is extremely dodgy. So that's as much as I knew. It's not something that I had researched, but I knew as much as that.
Right.
And seeing this, I came out in spots, and I immediately wrote an email before this call and said, oh, you know, I'm not going to be joining this call. After which there was a certain amount of conflict, let's say, and unpleasantness, but we'll pass on that. Basically, I went back to my work and I just forgot all about this. So then, as I say, I was then contacted in October, and I put these two people together in Croatia and in the UK, and then they got on with it. And the next thing I knew, this Stop 5G International was forming. And then this Nicolya Christi was behind it. And also, Arthur Furstenberg was very closely involved in all of this. And I should explain that it was Arthur who set up the website, and it's Arthur who has complete control of all the email addresses of the signatories. So when I saw that she was behind this, I wrote to the entire group and I said, listen, you need to be very, very careful, because you have somebody amongst your number who is associated with something that looks quite dubious. And if you go ahead now with this, it could end extremely badly. Now, this led to about a week or 10 days worth of email exchanges. I asked for transparency. Given the experience that we had, where we had been offered a website and it seemed very much like a trap to us, I said, well, you know, can I have full disclosure and transparency about this Stop 5G International? You know, who's behind it, who's funding it, who's funded the website, who's hosting the website, what is going on here? Now, I didn't get answers. I got sort of, you know, attacked. And some very vague reassurances about how nice all these people were in Stop 5G International. And, you know, frankly, my attitude is, well, I don't care how nice people seem. You know, I want to know facts.
Sure.
So, so then Arthur Firstenberg actually went ahead and effectively merged the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space with this Stop 5G International group. And he did that by actually joining them as an executive member and actually sending messages out from the official appeal, effectively, directing everybody to stop 5G International. So the two things have been merged.
I also got an email, just to say,
Yes, yeah.
because I signed it a while ago, so I was on the mailing list, and I also got an email, just to say.
Yeah. So, in my view, this is entirely unethical. At that time, there were 190,000 signatories to the appeal who did not sign up to Stop 5G International, and their data should not be shared with Stop 5G International, especially if there is somebody in Stop 5G International who is associated with very dubious people. Now, I wasn't looking in the direction that I started to look in at all. I was totally concentrated on 5G. But because of all this, I had to start looking at this woman, Nicolya Christi, and at WorldShift.
Now,
so
I just tell the viewers and the listeners, open your ears, open your eyes. Now the juicy stuff is coming out, all right? So, drop for a second what you know about 5G and what it is to do, why it's here, where is it. Leave this aside for the rest of the interview. Now we are moving to speak about some other things, probably deeper than just the means or the tool which 5G is. Yes, to control population, maybe to harm people, etc., etc., etc. Let's leave that for a second and go one level deeper. Go on, Claire.
Okay. So I started digging, and I found some very, very interesting and very disturbing information. So this woman was appointed to be leader of this WorldShift organization by Ervin Laszlo. Now, Ervin Laszlo was the founder in Hungary of the Club of Rome, and he also founded the Club of Budapest, which is a subsidiary of the Club of Rome. So the Club of Rome set out to prove that the planet is overpopulated and that the resources of the planet will not be enough to meet the needs of a future large population. So they support depopulation. Explicitly they support depopulation in the most offensive way. They've called mankind a cancer that must be cut out. They say the enemy of humanity is man.
Do you want me to show the document now?
Yes, please.
All right. Hang on a second. Here it is. Can you see it?
Yes.
Do you want to read it? Can you read it or shall I read it?
Yeah, you go ahead and read it. Yeah?
Just your voice is nicer and your accent is better. So,
okay.
But all right. I don't.
I've got my glasses on. Hang on.
No. You know what? I will read it, and I will because I enjoy reading it because of the emphasis that I put here.
Yeah.
All right. So it starts at the top. The common enemy of humanity is man. Now this is obviously from the Club of Rome. All right. It says here in the book, the cover of the book, a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. So, in searching for a common enemy, searching as if that's not enough, we are searching for other enemies against whom we can unite. We came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which must be confronted by everyone together. But in designating these dangers as the enemy, we fall into the trap which we have already warned readers about, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. Now hang on, I want to go quickly through specific words here, just because people read it and sometimes I know it because I've done 4 different shows just on this piece of paper, on this paragraph, so I just emphasize few words here. First of all, in searching for a common enemy, so there is intention to find a new common enemy, and people in the Club of Rome, which is a think tank group for the globalists, okay, like the Club of Budapest, Rotary Club, etc. There's many clubs, thinking groups or clubs for various purposes. So they were searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite. They came up with the idea that pollution, global warming, water shortages, things that we see now in reality. So they were thinking about it in advance. They came up with the idea that these sort of threats would fit the bill as a common enemy whom we can unite against. Now, I go quickly towards the end. It is only, first of all, these dangers are caused by human interventions, all right? And it is only through changed attitudes and behavior, meaning we need to re-educate the people in order for them to change their attitudes and behavior towards certain things which we took for granted for many years. And therefore, the real enemy is humanity itself, meaning man is the one that is causing, or human interventions is what? Causing global warming, water shortages, pollution, although they were searching for something and they came up with the ideas that these things will cause it. But now they are saying that through changed attitudes and behavior, we can change ourselves as being the enemy of nature or of what they came up with. So it's like a flip-flop of something they thought of, and then it becomes miraculously, it becomes a reality, and now we need to change our behavior and attitude in order to change reality. So this is social engineering at its best. Just one paragraph. Obviously there's more examples of it, and it can come from the Tavistock Institute in the US since nearly 100 years ago. But all this social engineering, this is just part of it. The Club of Rome, and what it's here to put out is to convince us that we are our own enemy. The CO2 that we put out is the enemy of nature, of life, and we should reduce CO2, meaning we should reduce our breath, and we should reduce maybe the number of the people who are breathing, because we pollute the planet, or at least that's the ideas they came up with. Now I'll let you go on. Do you still want the quote, or we can go back to video?
No, you can take it down. Thank you.
Excellent.
So what we also have to explain is that the eugenics agenda reaches back over 100 years.
More, yes. Started in the UK, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So this started with Cecil Rhodes, who was a racist and who believed that the British were the best race on earth and needed to dominate everywhere. Now, if anybody knows this book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Now, I've actually owned this book for a number of years, but I've only just read it.
Wow. Who
now,
is the author?
This is Gary Allen and Larry Abraham.
All right.
So this was written in the 1970s, but it's absolutely valid today because this tells you about this whole story of high finance, the globalists, Cecil Rhodes, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and exactly how the conspiracy is carried out. Also through the United Nations, which I can also vouch for because I was an editor at the United Nations, and I see how everything, all the policies are channeled through all the United Nations programs and then channeled into all of the countries. So, this is how 5G is being rolled out through the United Nations. It's standard operating procedure. Yeah? So, you have a eugenics agenda which goes right back. Now, the United Nations has been used for the furtherance of the eugenics agenda. So Julian Huxley, who was the brother of Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. So apparently the Huxleys were fully behind eugenics.
Sure.
So Julian Huxley was the chair of the British Eugenics Society, and he also was the first director of UNESCO. Yeah? So, and he, I mean, I don't think I've got the quotes in front of me here, but he actually stated very explicitly that he was in support of eugenics and that it should be channeled through UNESCO, yeah? But under different labels, because you can't just tell people that they need to be killed, yeah? You need to package it, in a pleasanter way, so that people vote for it themselves. And then you have Maurice Strong, who was a Rockefeller protege, and he also he actually started the UN Environment Programme. And if you look at environmentalism is actually all about depopulation. Yeah? And here I can actually read you some quotes from environmentalists, which will give you a flavor of the thinking. Yeah? I just need to find them. Hope you can cut bits out of this.
No, I won't.
Oh, you won't?
No,
oh, okay.
So watch out now, you know what you...
Okay. All right, here we are. So, John Davis, editor of Earth First Journal. Human beings as a species have no more value than slugs. James Lovelock, Healing Gaia. Humans on the Earth behave in some ways like a pathogenic microorganism or like the cells of a tumor. Club of Rome itself, in Mankind at the Turning Point, said, the Earth has cancer and the cancer is man. Paul Ehrlich, who wrote The Population Bomb, a cancer is an uncontrolled multiplication of cells. The population explosion is an uncontrolled multiplication of people. We must shift our efforts from the treatment of the symptoms to the cutting out of the cancer. The operation will demand many apparently brutal and heartless decisions. The Global Biodiversity Assessment of the United Nations. A reasonable estimate for an industrialized world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion. At the more frugal European standard of living, 2 to 3 billion would be possible. Ted Turner, founder of CNN and major UN donor, a total population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal.
He should start with himself. That's what I tell everyone who.
Well, that's what I say.
Yeah.
You know, if these people are so keen on depopulation, why are they not queuing up for it themselves as the first
Exactly.
volunteers? You know,
I mean,
it
set an
seems obvious to
example.
me.
Yes, set
Absolutely,
an example.
set an example if they're
Yes.
so enthusiastic.
If
But it's
you
never
saw-
about them, you see. It's always about somebody else.
Sure.
You know, when you support depopulation, it's also always about other people and not you. Yeah, but we'll come back to that
Yes,
because
yes.
for that we need to look at Club of Budapest and WorldShift. Yeah. So to go on with these quotes, Club of Rome, goals for mankind. The resultant ideal sustainable population is hence more than 500 million, but less than 1 billion.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then we have Jacques Cousteau,
Yeah.
who wrote in the UNESCO Courier, which is a sort of journal at UNESCO, one America burdens the earth much more than 20 Bangladeshis. This is a terrible thing to say. In order to stabilize world population, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. It's a horrible thing to say, but it's just as bad not to say it. Yeah? So that gives you a flavor of the thinking behind all this. Yeah? So you have an ongoing eugenics program. Of course, you know, the name eugenics became discredited because of Hitler.
Yeah.
So it was repackaged into depopulation, and depopulation is a noun. So it, you know, seems a bit neutral to talk about depopulation. Oh, quite a good thing. They're so overpopulated. Well, depopulation. You don't quite think about sort of, you know, killing a lot of people when you talk about depopulation, yeah? And then it actually was translated into environmentalism. So you have a lot of organizations which were started up, you know, the Conservation Fund for Nature, or whatever it is, the World Wildlife Fund. There's an endless number of them which were actually started up not to protect the environment, but actually to depopulate the earth. And this is where you come to Agenda 21, which Rosa Quire has talked about. Agenda 21, which has morphed into Agenda 2030, is actually about inventorying everything and rationing everything and getting people off the land. So you recently have this global deal for nature, I think it's called, which actually says that we need to reserve 50% of the earth for wilderness areas. But that means you've got to take the people off those areas. Yeah?
This is
And
where
therefore you,
this is where smart cities come
that's
very handy.
where the smart cities come in, yeah? These megalopolises, everybody's supposed to be pushed into, where they can be completely controlled, yeah? So that kind of gives you the whole eugenics depopulation context, yeah? So then let's look more closely then at this world shift. Now, Club of Rome has actually spawned innumerable organizations. I mean, there are so many, you can't even count them. This is everywhere because it's so heavily financed, yeah? But the principal ones would seem to me, according to my research, and I really, you know, invite everybody to go and do their own research because I'm not an expert. I'm just looking at this for the first time, yeah? But the principal organizations that have been spawned by the Club of Rome are the Club of Budapest and the Club of Madrid. Now, the Club of Madrid is the political arm. And at the Club of Madrid, you have a whole host of world leaders, ex-world leaders, so ex-prime ministers and presidents, who have to know what they are supporting. So, you know, I've had to come to the conclusion in looking at this, this is so abhorrent to me that I can't imagine anybody really supporting this. So you try to persuade yourself that, oh, well, you know, maybe they don't realize, you know, maybe they haven't seen these quotations that I've seen. No, I'm sorry. You know, if you are actually signing up to this, if you are joining organizations, especially if you're a politician, you know what you're signing up to.
This is really important what you're saying now for most people who cannot really grasp even the fact that people they know from local politics joining other foundations, organizations, supporting the killing of others, and it almost one cannot comprehend and accept it as a fact. I mean, it doesn't correlate with anything we know. Maybe stuff from the Second World War, but it's back then. It's not here and now, so it doesn't make sense. But
yeah, exactly. It's cognitive dissonance. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Well, one of the points. I mean, there was a very good documentary made. I think it's called "The Global Warming Swindle," which you can find on YouTube. Yeah. And one of the things they point out is that actually this is a genocide against Africa, because this whole carbon trading thing is about not allowing Africa to develop.
Yes, I agree.
So you can imagine that if there's money to be made out of carbon trading by Africans, well, you can imagine that it's going to be the corrupt dictators that take all this money.
Sure.
So unless you have real development in African countries, then you're talking about millions of people dying. And we might add at this point that the UN has been accused of sterilizing a couple of million women in Kenya.
Also in the Philippines before.
Yes, that. Exactly. Yes, so there are these accusations out there.
I published that back in 2009, you know, or 2010.
So the question is, you know, this whole depopulation thing, you know, as I say, it's like this neutral noun, you know, oh, depopulate. Oh, yeah, well, you know, if there are too many people, yes, you know, maybe we should depopulate. Yeah. Oh, but maybe it's okay if we just depopulate in developing countries, but not in the industrialized world. You know, is that okay? You know, as long as it's not me, then depopulation seems like quite a good idea. I mean, I'm sorry, I find this whole thing so utterly abhorrent, repugnant. You know, it's hard to contemplate it. Yeah? So I can understand that people can't accept this, but the documents are all there and the story is all there, and people need to go and do their own research.
And also, we are being told again and again that this is what is happening, this is the agenda, this is what's going to happen, but somehow, because of this cognitive dissonance, we cannot, well, I can and you can and some of us can, because we're already in it for some time, but most people cannot, it doesn't fit nowhere in their brain. So it's been rejected, you know, as a possibility that we are being depopulated. I mean, when you read family planning, and you don't know, it's just a code name for depopulation, for killing you, for making you not to bring babies
Parenthood.
anymore.
I mean, Bill Gates' father, I think, was the head of Planned Parenthood, which is again the same agenda.
Same agenda. So they use new language. You know, in interviews I've done with Lark in Texas about communitarianism, which is
that's part of the same thing.
Exactly.
That's the Fabian Society.
With
Fabian Society.
And capitalism.
Yeah.
So Lark was actually speaking about how they change the language, so the new generations will not know what was in terms of language, how to describe things, and they give horrible stuff like really nice names. So, like you said, depopulation.
Then people need to look up the Fabian Society, which was started at the end of the 19th century.
Yeah.
And the image of the Fabian Society is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. And that tells you everything that you need to know. And it was named the Fabian Society after General Fabius, the Roman General Fabius, whose strategy was to wear down the enemy over time, not to directly face the enemy, but to wear them down. Yeah, and so this is about gradualism. Yeah, these people don't care if it takes 100 years. Yeah, but they will act through deceit to persuade people that they need to vote for their own demise. And that's what we see happening here. And that's what we're trying to set out here, Shai, isn't it? Yeah. So to come back to Club of Madrid, yeah. So Club of Madrid is ex-world leaders, and they have to know what they signed up for. And I find it very interesting to note that Antonio Guterres, the present United Nations Secretary General, is a member of Club of Madrid.
That it's not, it's not a surprise to me. I didn't know, but I'm not surprised. It makes sense.
Yeah,
it fits.
yeah.
It fits
It fits.
everything else.
Yes, it fits.
Yes.
So to go then to Club of Budapest. So if Club of Madrid is the political arm, Club of Budapest is the social engineering arm, and they explicitly say they work on social and cultural matters. So if you look at Ervin Laszlo has the Laszlo Institute for New Paradigm Research. And this is where we start getting into New Age and consciousness and spirituality. So this is the hijack that we find here, yeah? That a lot of people feel they've bought into this. Oh, consciousness. Oh, spiritual. Oh, I can relate to that. I'm a nice, kind person. Yes. Oh, this is very nice. We're going to save the world through consciousness and spirituality. So I'd like to take a look at the WorldShift 20 declaration. So just to show you the lineage, it was Ervin Laszlo who appointed Nicolya Christi to be the leader of the WorldShift movement. And the WorldShift movement has the responsibility of carrying out the international projects of the Club of Budapest. And then in 2011, there was the WorldShift 20 declaration. So let's have a look at the WorldShift 20 declaration. Okay, so first of all, they explicitly say that the WorldShift 20 declaration bases itself on the limits to growth of the Club of Rome. Okay? So there we have the eugenicist agenda. That's behind the WorldShift 20 declaration. And then what we find in the WorldShift 20 declaration, it says, the people are only responsible for choosing leadership that is knowledgeable and wise. So the people don't have to be knowledgeable or wise. In fact, we're hoping that they won't be, but they just choose the leaders such as Ervin Laszlo and Nicolya Christi, yeah? Always supposing they are knowledgeable and wise, yeah? So what else have we got? So they say, we need to replace the obsolete notions of nation states. We need a whole system shift. The human community needs comprehensive structural reform. We need to leave everything we know behind in order to get to where we need to go. We need a systemic, thorough reinvention of every aspect of humanity. All states should establish an office for the specific fulfillment of the Millennium Development Goals, which morphed into Agenda 21 2030. Capital must be protected. They talk about society as a limited liability entity. We must implement a proper valuation of the natural world independent of human interests. And national sovereignty must be balanced with universal norms and values. We must partner one another through the greatest social transformation ever known.
There you have it.
So what this is, there you have it. You see, what this is actually a dictatorship. It's totalitarian one world government under spiritual, supposedly, under spiritual principles. And it's a Maoist cultural revolution because they want to completely restructure society, get rid of nation states, get rid of national sovereignty. Yeah, it's it's a revolution, yeah. And then when you start looking at Extinction Rebellion, yeah. So Extinction Rebellion, it seems to me, are the red guards of this Maoist cultural revolution. Because if you want to smash society, as Mao did, then you're going to need young people. He used young people to do this, yeah. So you're going to need red guards. So you set up little Greta, who is a psyop, for this whole anthropogenic climate change narrative. Now, what you see her doing, interestingly, is she is a stooge to set up intergenerational warfare. So I've seen two examples of this in Germany over Christmas on national television. A children's choir was taught to sing a very, very offensive song about anthropogenic climate change. And the words were, Granny is a revolting old sow because she's doing nothing about climate change. Now, apparently this word sow that was used in German is particularly offensive, much more offensive even than it sounds in English. And I've been told that this was also, the same thing was also played out in New Zealand. Now, given that everything else I've seen is also, I've seen all of it play out globally, then I'm assuming that probably this is also global. Now, what happened in Germany was that there was a huge outcry about the offensiveness of this. But make no mistake, Extinction Rebellion is a death cult. They dress up in red robes, like the Red Guards. They parade with skeletons and coffins, and they spew blood on the street. This is a death cult. So when people support Extinction Rebellion and this anthropogenic climate change narrative, they are voting for their own demise. This is the psyop that has been practiced. And little Greta is an autistic child. Now, I don't have a problem with autistic children, but if you're going to take an autistic child who has an eidetic memory, so in other words, she remembers everything perfectly. She has parents in the theatrical business, so she is being coached. Now, this autistic child has herself said that she's antisocial, she lives in terror and fear and panic, and she is clearly unempathic. So she has been coached to deliver speeches and also mimic empathic emotional behavior, which actually she does not feel. And if you watch her make these speeches, you will see that. So this child is being manipulated. She's a life-sized puppet who has been created to manipulate the public and to lead this intergenerational warfare. So, I mean, it doesn't get more devious and
well, it actually it does. But
well, okay, we may get to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll get there, but it does.
Okay. Well, there is more.
Yeah, there is much more.
So there is more.
Actually.
So as time went on, and I carried on looking into this world shift, so I think that we can see by now that the whole purpose of world shift, so what is this world shift? It is this complete revolution and destruction of everything that we have ever known. Now, if we go back to Club of Budapest and Ervin Laszlo, so there was a woman who died last year called Barbara Marx Hubbard, and she was a member of Club of Budapest. And somewhere here I have what she said. So she said, she wrote a book. Where are we? So she wrote a book, and in it she said, "We, the elders, have been patiently waiting until the very last moment before the quantum transformation to take action to cut out this corrupted and corrupting element in the body of humanity. It is like watching a cancer grow." Again, we've got this cancer meme, haven't we? It is like watching a cancer grow. Something must be done before the whole body is destroyed. The self-centered members must be destroyed. There is no alternative. Only the God-centered can evolve. Fortunately, you, dearly beloveds, are not responsible for this act. We are. We are in charge of God's selection process for planet Earth. He selects, we destroy, we are the riders of the pale horse, death. We will use whatever means we must to make this act of destruction as quick and painless as possible to the one half of the world who are capable of evolving.
Strong words, actually, very strong words.
So I put this, when I discovered that she had said this, I put this before the members of Stop 5G International. And I said, okay, you are now associating with Nicolya Christi and WorldShift. And WorldShift is a project of Club of Budapest. Barbara Marx Hubbard was a member of Club of Budapest. She said these very, very repugnant words about killing large numbers of people. Do you repudiate this? And I was attacked. Not a single member of Stop 5G International, nor Nicolya Christi, repudiated this. Yeah? And then I found that, so it doesn't stop there. Then I found that Barbara Marx Hubbard actually said in a Facebook post dated 8th of February 2016, she said, "Dear friends, I am exploring the reality that we are becoming a new species. I call this species Homo Universalis. Homo Universalis has direct access to the new capacities, including all radical new technologies, such as biotech, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc." Okay, so she's also endorsing the cyborgization of humanity. So now we have the complete picture that the depopulation is proposed in this shell. It's packaged as being conscious and spiritual. Now, there's a very good article online called Gaia's Gurus. And if you go and look at that, you find that people like Maurice Strong and other very, very prominent people in the environmental movement are actually Gaians, yeah? And they are so committed to Gaia, to protecting Gaia, that this is why the human population has to be eliminated. So it is actually, you know, you're such a loving, caring, compassionate person when it comes to protecting the earth, that you are willing to see most of the human population eliminated.
You are willing to sacrifice others.
Others,
Yes.
of course.
Of
You're
course.
not queuing up yourself,
Yes, yes.
yeah, because you want to see the benefits, obviously. But this is the package, yeah.
I agree.
This is the package.
I agree.
And not only that, but Ervin Laszlo wrote a book called, what was it called? The Green New Deal, Politics and the New Spirituality, or something like that. So you can see that this is the package. So the idea is to depopulate the earth, move people into smart cities, cyborgize them so that you can have totalitarian one world government and control everybody, even their minds and certainly their movements. And then you can have your wilderness areas, which you can then exploit for profit, which is the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And this is called naturocracy. So,
Yes.
you know, that's the
This
picture.
yes.
That's the picture. But I, you know, as I say, I'm new to all of this. Yeah, I'm not an expert on any of this, but this is what I have found out over the last 6 weeks. And I really strongly recommend that people go and do their own research.
I want to continue what you just presented, and first of all, I would remind the viewers that what you just did is presenting in words a very large octopus, and you didn't present all the tentacles, but some of them. But it's
Which ones have I left out, Shai?
oh, there's more. There's more.
It's a quick overview.
What?
It's a quick overview.
Yes, yes. And I think I was about to say it's enough, at least for someone to start realizing that everything that we see out there in the mainstream media, coming from governments, coming from the UN and other organizations as such, is actually part of very large social engineering.
Yes.
That its aim is what you just described. It's to A, depopulate, B, control the rest, C, seize all the available land and resources, natural resources, and D, making sure that the offsprings of the royal families / globalists / Jesuits / the cabal / whatever you want to put here, that their offsprings will have the rest of Earth, of Gaia, for the rest of their lives. Now, saying that, I must address the common mind of the majority of people living now, well, those who listen to this talk, and tell them something like that. All of us, or really the big majority of us, are empathic creatures. We cannot, normally, we cannot think in these terms like you just described, even though the words are very slippery and slick and they describe something horrible in a very nice way. Most of us cannot, even if we choose to, we cannot be psychopathic. We still feel empathy towards others. But in order to understand, or to get a glimpse even, just for a second, to understand this pathology, this way of thinking, planning and acting of the globalist, meaning Agenda 21, 2030, depopulation, etc., we should think of ourselves for a second like kings. Let's say we are the kings and queens or princesses of the earth. And we have 8 billion people here sucking energy which is ours because we are the kings. All of this belongs to us. And they disturb us. They disturb our resources. They disturb our energy. They disturb our livelihood. And we were educated, we were brought up knowing we are the kings and queens of this earth. So in order for us to maintain our quality of life as kings and queens, we need to find a way to minimize even further the slave caste, the slave layer of earth, of the population. Now there's obviously, because of inventions, because of science, because of hygiene and all sorts of developments in our life and in health, this slave caste is doing well. He's living to the age of 80 now, and he's demanding more pensions and more money, and doesn't matter what we do, you know, they keep prosper and obviously populate more and more. And there was 1 billion and it became 3 and now it's 8. What we do with them? So, and this is the tricky part. In order for us to succeed without them attacking us, we need to convince them that it's for their own good to minimize their quality of life, to plan their family, to give up their personal ownership of things, of land, of homes, etc. And
so you package it into a fake climate change religion,
for example,
because that's what it's become. It's become
yes,
a religion.
I agree.
And you virtue signal by supporting and regurgitating all this nonsense about climate change. This is how you show that you care. Yeah.
Yeah, and also
I care about the planet, therefore I believe in climate change.
Exactly,
therefore I believe that human beings must be made extinct, right?
Yes. It's where I'm going. I mean, one side is what I read before from the Club of Rome. We need to change the slaves' behavior, all right, and tendencies. No, I don't remember the words. Hang on, I have it here. Here it is. Changed attitudes and behavior of the slaves. That's what we need to do. All right, hang on a second, sorry. Yes. In order for them to minimize their own livelihood, to minimize their own consumption, to minimize their own health and life, and obviously children. In order to do that, we need to convince them to change behavior and attitude. And this is where everything you shared with us till now, this is where it comes into place. Now, the lame person who watched the news, take his cup of coffee and listening, you know, on the way to work, listening to the news, to the radio, and come back home and listening to the news and get all the pumped up media propaganda, he should ask himself or herself, do you like your life? Yes, probably. Would you like to save Earth? Yes, if I can. But in order to save Earth, I need to understand that Earth is in problem. But, but those who convince me that the planet is in a problem is exactly those who want me to change my behavior and attitude to minimize myself. It's a catch-22.
That's the trick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
First, you have to persuade people that the Earth needs saving.
Yes.
So who was it that first suggested that the Earth needed saving? It was Club of Rome. So they set up their own mathematical models
We
with
came
their
up
own
with the
questions
idea.
that produced the result
Yes.
that the Earth needed saving because it was going to be overpopulated. But I don't accept the premise.
Exactly.
You see, I don't even
And
accept that the Earth needs saving. There's nothing wrong with the Earth. If
exactly.
you would just stop chemtrailing,
For example,
and if you would stop built-in obsolescence and pillaging the planet for natural resources for this ridiculous consumer society that actually nobody wants except the globalists, yeah, then actually, I don't see that we have a problem.
we don't. We don't. Actually, the problems are caused by the same globalists.
Yes,
The real problems are caused by them because they are disturbing the natural processes. Not
absolutely,
humanity, but those who
absolutely.
took for themselves the title of kings and queens of the planet. They are the problem. So again, it's the minority which is actually causing the majority of the problems. Now, again,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I remind the listeners, the viewers, the quote from the Club of Rome. We came up with the idea that famine, water shortages, global warming would fit the bill. Now, this is, let's say it was published in 91, this book, or 92. So it's already 30 years, all right, now. But it was
Well, I think
already
they
thought
started. I
of
think the original one,
in
Limits
the
to Growth, I think
70s.
was
Yeah, I know. I'm
1972.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, it was thought of, or at least the first handwrite was in the 70s. But it was planned even before that. I mean, think about George Orwell in 1984 or Aldous Huxley. This is back in the 50s, let's say. So we're talking at least, I'm very, very modest, at least 70 years of planning, all right? Of what we're seeing now. And again, we came up with the idea that global warming, water shortages, famine would fit the bill. Now what we see, we have no water. There's global warming. There's famine. There's all sorts
No, they
of
don't. No, Shai, they don't call it global warming
climate change.
because it had to be called climate change because it's actually getting colder.
Of course.
First of all, they were alleging that it was warming, but
Yes.
when they couldn't prove that anymore,
Exactly.
they have altered all
Yes.
the tables. Now, what's really interesting about this is, as I've looked into this, I've seen that almost everybody has bought into it.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
so this
our
is why
problem.
it's pushed everywhere by everybody. Yeah, and even the official bodies, it's not just the UN, but meteorological organizations and so forth, they've
Groups of
actually
scientists,
changed
yes.
their statistics. They've actually eliminated
Yeah.
statistics and graphs to fit this
Yeah.
big lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's bought into it. The whole of the media is controlled. Every prominent person has bought into it. Everybody wants to think of themselves as conscious and spiritual. So they've even got that side
And
of it as
green, and
well.
very green, and ecological,
And very green.
and
We're all so
sustainable.
green. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's they've done a beautiful mind job
Yes.
on everybody.
They
Yeah.
had a lot of time for that. And in a minute we will tie it also with what is really happening now and what is 5G all about. Because before this talk, I just shared with the audience, Claire and I discussed a few things just before the talk. Although this is live, this is real, we didn't plan to speak about these things. And really, Claire was saying, if you don't mind, I'll say that 5G is sort of a psyop. And I'm like, yes, I mean, it is real. 5G is a technology and it is being deployed while we speak. So it's not a total psyop, but it is here to divert our attention because 5G is not the goal. The goal is depopulation. The goal is controlling natural resources, human race, and all life, all nature.
Yeah.
And which is the creation of God, really. So this is the goal, is to take hold of what actually belongs to God, And 5G, it's a technological tool based with artificial intelligence to make things easier, faster, automatic, so we don't have even to be bothered by doing it after that, because the AI will take care of the cyborgs. And we, remind you, the kings and queens of the earth, we will live our life peacefully in one forest or in a big chalet, and we have slaves and we have, all sorts of weird stuff, which I don't want to go there even. So,
well, to sum up, I think 5G is the technological tool that enables the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, technocracy, one world government, and totalitarianism. So it's actually the end of life as we know it. So it's the end of family, it's the end of fertility, it's the end of society, it's the end of nation states, it's the end of national sovereignty, it's the end of everything. It really is the end of life as we know it. That's what you're facing with 5G. But 5G is the technology that facilitates the bigger agenda, which we've just talked about.
Yes. And so the context of 5G is this agenda. 5G is not on its own. It's just a tool. It's one tentacle of the octopus. It's important tentacle because it's connected to everyone else. And,
exactly. And you see the PSYOP part of it, because I've been in this campaign now for 21 months, And the PSYOP part of it is that the people in the Stop 5G campaign, they're just totally focused on 5G and they can't see anything outside. And you have the scientists who say, no, we must only stick to the science. We can't talk about anything else. We will be discredited as soon as we bring in anything else. Now, I just want to mention where the meme of conspiracy theory comes from. Created by the CIA to stop people in the 1960s criticizing the Warren Commission report on the killing of John F. Kennedy. That's where it comes from. That's why people will self-censor. What we have here is a massive conspiracy. Now, there's only one conspiracy on this planet, as far as I'm concerned. But this conspiracy has a million threads. So the problem with the 5G campaign is that you've got the scientists who will not look at the context. It's as if 5G has been cultured in a petri dish. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Claire, I have tears in my eyes. I tell you why. Because I've seen in the last, let's say, 1 year, so many scientists putting out papers, documents, petitions, and they don't understand why they are being ignored by the UN, by the WHO, by the FCC, by all these initial, establishments and organizations. They don't understand why they're being ignored. And I'm trying to tell them on a private basis through emails and such, because I'm in touch with some of them at least. Listen. Of course you'll be ignored because they don't care about the science. There's a context to this 5G story, and it's not scientific. It's a shitty agenda to depopulate all of us and to harm all life. So whatever scientific paper you bring in without the knowledge of the context that you present it to, because mostly the UN is part of this agenda, the WHO, the UN and all its organizations, as well as governments, as well as clubs or think tank groups, etc. They're all part of this octopus. So you present a scientific paper and you think this will change anything? No, man, you should A, run for your life, if you have anywhere to go to, or B, really be alarmed and start to speak about the conspiracy, the real conspiracy, not the theory, the real conspiracy, which
is documented. Now we've only touched on a very tiny part of this documentation, but it's all there. I'll send you a bunch of links for people to look at. Now you have to be careful about this, because obviously as soon as I release any links on any of this, it suddenly gets deleted. I wonder why that is.
Don't worry, I opened another channel and I have other sources. But yes, please, I do want the links, obviously. For people.
So this is the problem you see with the 5G campaign, is that people will not look at the context. And that's why, I don't see any point now in campaigning about 5G, as far as I'm concerned,
There
because
is a point as
it's the
long as
wrong
you,
direction, yeah?
but there is a point as long as you link it
As long
to
as you link it, yes,
the
yes. But you
context.
see, 5G is itself so huge and so
Yes,
complex
yes,
that you can really lose yourself in
yes,
it,
yes.
yeah?
I agree.
And so it's just not productive. And another thing is, and I've often said this in interviews, when I was asked to join the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space, I said I'm not supportive of appeals. Yeah,
I agree.
in principle, as an informational vehicle, that document is extremely useful. Yeah, and as a way of people saying I do not consent to this agenda,
Yeah.
then it was useful until it was hijacked. Yeah? But as an appeal, why you would be appealing to the very perpetrators of 5G to think again about whether they really want to kill you, I can't see the point in that. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see it, maybe not on a daily basis, but I see it like prominent scientists. They don't know what to do. They're lost because no one is listening to them. I mean, whether it's an appeal, whether it's a petition, whether it's any research about the effect of millimeter waves or sub-gigahertz or LED lights and all the warnings, what it does to insects, to animals, to the plants and microorganisms and us, and nobody cares. Nobody is reading these papers. Hello, wake up. It's not we are already missed this stop, It's now about the next stop, and we better wake up and do something before the next stop, because no one wants it to be the last stop. And as we know,
Yeah.
especially it's a good example with the trains and all the
Yeah.
new hospitals now they're building in China, which is another topic I'd like just to touch upon, because as we discussed earlier, no one really knows what's happening in China, because we cannot trust the mainstream, obviously the official version. We cannot even trust the alternative media, because how do I know that they speak the truth? I also don't know. I don't know if what is happening in China is false flag, if it's real, if it's made by a virus from a lab, or if it's made by technology. I would like, if you don't mind, I just want to take the cat out. So if you no, but if you don't mind, because I want the flow to continue,
Yes.
just
Okay. Yeah. Well,
tell the viewers.
I've got a quotation I can read while you take the cat out.
Do you want to, do you want to share your screen, Claire?
No, actually,
No.
I'll just read it out. I can send you these
All right. So just
quotes later. Yeah.
read it out, and then also tell the audience about the technology of 5G and Wi-Fi in general, but 5G in particular, and Wuhan area in China. All right?
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Well, there was a book written by Zbigniew Brzezinski, I can't pronounce his name properly, called Between Two Ages. And this was written quite a number of years ago, I think in the 1970s. And there's a note on page 28, and the note says, by the year 2018, technology will make available to the leaders of the major nations a variety of techniques for conducting secret warfare, of which only a bare minimum of the security forces need be appraised. One nation may attack a competitor covertly by bacteriological means, thoroughly weakening the population, though with a minimum of fatalities, before taking over with its own overt armed forces. Alternatively, techniques of weather modification could be employed to produce prolonged periods of drought or storm, thereby weakening a nation's capacity and forcing it to accept the demands of the competitor. So we now have the technology for both weather modification and we have biological weapons. Yeah, so we have the capacity to do both of these things. Now, as you've said, with Wuhan, we don't know what's happening, but we do know that electromagnetic radiation produces symptoms which are very, very similar to flu.
Can be,
And
yes.
if this is, I mean, we don't know if it is the coronavirus, but we have been told that these symptoms are similar to flu symptoms. So it is suggestive, given that Wuhan was or is China's first 5G smart city. Yeah.
There's tens of thousands of antennas of 5G there.
Yeah, so it's a smart city. So, I mean, it is possible that this is attributable to 5G. I mean, this is what we have been predicting after all, yeah? And then before we started recording, we were talking about these several incidents that took place in October 2018, where there were about 5 aircraft where nearly all the passengers suddenly went down with flu symptoms and the crew started collapsing. This sounds very, very similar to what is happening in Wuhan. Yeah? So these aircraft, they called ahead for ambulances to meet the aircraft and nobody could understand what was happening. And then it appeared that a few people might have been taken to hospital, but most of the people very quickly recovered within a couple of hours after landing. Yeah? So I looked into these mysterious sicknesses on all these aircraft. And what I found, it was different companies, but one of the companies involved was American Airlines. And at that time, American Airlines had retrofitted about 200 of their aircraft with brand new Wi-Fi from satellite. So until that point, the Wi-Fi had come from the ground and had been quite weak. But with this new satellite connection, they had very, very powerful Wi-Fi. And interestingly, they also had public access points. So my journey actually started at these public access points. So now on long-haul flights, you now have these public access points. Now, when I looked into this, and these were fitted at the UN, there was supposed to be a 20-centimeter gap between the human body and the public access point. So imagine if this is in your overhead locker on your aircraft and you're sitting underneath it. And I mean, I don't know in which way the signal comes out, but, you know, any proximity to any one of these 4 devices on an aircraft could be disastrous, it seems to me. So,
especially in a metal body, I mean,
in a metal body. Well, I mean, there's also documentation, because a lot of pilots have actually been protesting about Wi-Fi on board, because you actually have a rounded fuselage, and this is like the worst. I mean, if it was bad at my work with metal walls in a small space, now you've got a circular metal fuselage, so this is coming at your body. You know, it's like perfectly designed to be maximally destructive, to be a weapon, effectively, So it's very interesting that this happened with 5 separate flights at this time. Now, I haven't heard since. I did see that a woman of about 31 mysteriously died on a long-haul flight to Australia last year. And I also saw that there was some incident where the co-pilot on a Russian plane upped and died a couple of months ago.
No, but anyway, listen, the air crew, they suffer a lot from radiation. I mean, they have, I think, the highest rates of heart problems. I don't remember exactly the statistics, but it's well known that air crew, pilots and air hostesses, etc. They suffer a lot from this sort of illnesses.
And before Wi-Fi, that was also already well known. But with Wi-Fi, I mean, you've taken it to another complete other level.
Absolutely.
So this is extremely dangerous. Now, my question would be, why has that not continued to happen? why did that just happen in October 2018, and then I haven't really heard much more about it.
So, and what's the answer,
So,
if there is
I
any?
don't know. I
Ah,
don't know. But, I would simply say that I find the parallels between what seems to be happening in China and what happened on those flights quite interesting. Yeah.
if you don't mind,
So
I
that's,
want to add something to that, because from what I know, about a couple of years ago, maybe less, in one school, I think it was in California, they've tried out 60 gigahertz in one school. I think it was in one school. I hope I'm not mistaken with the facts. But anyway, they've tried 60 gigahertz in one school. Almost everyone got sick. They stopped the test. They stopped the experiment. Now, I'm not familiar with the exact symptoms of the sickness that people got in this school. I won't be surprised. It's just an assumption, right? If in the Wuhan area also they used maybe 60 gigahertz, so a lot of people got sick. Now again, I'm just assuming, I don't know if it's true, because really we need to remember nobody really knows the truth out there that's happening in China. We do know, especially according to documents that Claire, you presented some of them, and there's many, many more books and a lot of documents referring to the plan to depopulate
yeah,
everything, not just human, but
yeah,
also animal kingdom and plant. So this is well documented. So this we can speak of it as fact, or we have enough
yeah,
evidences and
yeah,
proofs to show that
yeah,
this is the case, this is the plan, this is the conspiracy, not a theory.
yeah. Well, I
Regarding
just want to,
Wuhan, we don't know.
yeah, well, I just want to touch on a couple of things there. The 60 gigahertz. When I've looked into 60 gigahertz, 60 gigahertz has not been sold as part of the frequency auctions.
I know.
Yeah. So
Yes.
in other words, it can be used freely, which makes it quite desirable. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, in
In,
economic terms,
in the yes,
not
exactly.
in biological ones. So, in biological terms, 60 gigahertz actually, it actually asphyxiates you, but without your knowledge, because it means that your blood cannot pick up the oxygen.
Oxygen.
Apparently,
Yes.
this is what 60 gigahertz does. And when I've looked into 60 gigahertz, this is used for something called Y-gig,
Mm-hmm.
which seems to be an updated alternative to Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding was the main reason you might use 60 gigahertz would be in your home to connect up your various devices
Devices.
as you
Yes.
would with Bluetooth.
Yes.
So it seems to me that you would mostly be vulnerable to 60 gigahertz
At home.
in your own home. Yeah. Now, I don't know if 60 gigahertz is being used on the streets. I have no idea. Yeah.
I also
But
don't know.
certainly within a hospital, if they were using 60 gigahertz within the hospital, this could explain people upping and dying in
Yeah.
the hospital, for
Yeah.
example. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you say, we simply don't know.
We don't know.
Now, one thing we do know is that I found it extremely interesting just about a year ago when the World Health Organization included in a document mention of disease X. And this was headlines in the UK. Yeah, disease X. We don't know what it is, but it could be a pandemic. Disease X, be terrified now, well in advance, even though we don't have a name for it and we don't know what it is. I mean, bear in mind, one thing we should bear in mind is that Arthur Furstenberg suggested that the Spanish flu, which occurred at the end of the First World War, was likely attributable to the first use of radio by the US Armed Forces, which joined the First World War, I think in 1917.
Yeah, I read it. I read this
Dates,
piece. Yes.
yeah, the dates are quite interesting, yeah?
Yeah.
And so this could have caused massive exposure to electromagnetic radiation, and 50 million people died in that Spanish flu. Yeah?
I mean, just remember, we need any factor that can minimize the capability of your immune system so you can get ill, and if there's more people sick around you, more like, and there's no hygiene and no sanitation, etc.
Exactly.
It's
And
a slippery road.
the other point is that it's well documented by people such as Dr. Klinghardt that actually electromagnetic radiation and Wi-Fi enhances the action of it's either bacteria or viruses. So people have to check that out themselves. So you become vulnerable in multiple different ways to this. Yeah. So I think the danger here is that, as far as I understand it, the World Health Organization has thus far declared a global emergency and not a pandemic. Yeah? And my worry would be, given that everything that we know about nanotechnology, etc., and all this transhumanism and the rest of it, that we might have a situation where they declare that everybody must be forcibly vaccinated. And then what would you be vaccinated with? Now again, it sounds preposterous, but we already have compulsory vaccination. A number of different countries, I think Germany and Australia and other countries have actually introduced compulsory vaccinations. People, children are not allowed in school, etc. And parents cannot get, financial support from the government if they don't have their children vaccinated. So again, this is a very real scenario.
Very real, yes. And it's accelerating. I mean, with this sort of pandemic, real or not, I don't know, it's much easier to push people into even asking to be vaccinated. I mean, it's not just forced vaccination, it's causing this maybe false flag or maybe real event. Again, I'm not sure, but so people will ask to vaccinate and also would ask to vaccinate others because they are afraid, and that's the propaganda of the system.
Well, I think that, at this point, I think we can pull the whole thing together because, if you look at 5G, and 5G is a global agenda and it's being pushed by all the institutions. It's being pushed by the UN, the EU, all the governments. We know that we have capture of the regulatory agencies. So are you seriously telling me that you would want to be voluntarily vaccinated or, voluntarily call for general vaccination by these same perpetrators? Is there any trust left? I mean, in this 5G campaign, we have gone to these organizations, these governments and the UN, etc., and we have said this is incredibly dangerous. We have to have a moratorium. Now, I find it incredibly interesting to note that the government of Austria called for a health report on 5G. The government of Switzerland called for a health report on 5G. I think the government of the Netherlands did, and the German Federal Office on Radiation Protection said that they expressed their concerns that 5G would mean much higher rates of exposure, and they were worried about it. Now, the fact is that if you as a government call for a health report on 5G, it suggests that you don't know the consequences of 5G, which suggests that it's a giant biological experiment, which then suggests and mandates a moratorium. And we don't have moratoria. So in other words, what we have here is we have the complete collapse of the rule of law.
The law, I agree.
So this is where we are. Now, everything is exploded. 5G itself is totally illegal. under multiple international conventions,
Yeah.
under national law, under EU law. This is totally illegal. So what has to happen now is people have to take back their power. They have to realize that this has to be done locally, that they have to go to their local representatives and they have to inform them that they have absolutely no business implementing orders that come from national government or the UN or the EU, because this is all illegal.
Hang on, hang on.
So we have to do this locally. Yeah.
All right,
So
this
people
is-
have to take their power and they have to take action and they have to stop believing in any authority whatsoever on this planet.
This is, I think, I don't know if it's the most important subject, but definitely it's something we kept till the end, which is the action item. Now, I was about to ask you exactly about that, so it's great you brought it up. Before someone does something, he obviously needs to learn what he's on about. I mean, whether it's 5G, whether it's a new virus, whether it's forced vaccinations because of a new virus or old virus or whatever story, whether it's fluoride in the water, whether it's Wi-Fi in schools of, the children, and many other forced agendas in our daily lives, which it's done in a very slow pace normally, although now it seems like it's been increased, but very slow paced, and people need to pay attention. It's being done daily, and it's been the volume is going higher and higher.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
going
one thing.
faster.
Faster
Yeah,
and
it's
higher.
really
Yes,
being increased.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before you do anything, you need to read about it. You need to watch an interview like that and then go to the links that we will put in the description and go and learn and go to other websites, not news on TV or radio, not newspapers. Go and search in specific websites and through specific interviews, some of them in this channel, but not only. So you can actually learn from people who has done the research and basically sharing their knowledge and their expertise and their research, because Claire, again, you are not a researcher in this field. You just stumble upon something 21 months ago, like I was such and such years ago, and it led me because of curiosity, because of interest, because of maybe intellect stimulation. It doesn't matter now why. It can be saving your child, whatever. And it made people to go and research these fields and find out that we're talking about depopulation. So before you jump to your local representative and your counselor and telling him, listen, we are being exterminated and depopulated, and then you may sound like you should be elsewhere, not in his office. You better learn things before you speak them, and then you learn how to speak them, because you want to be presented as a serious guy, which I admit I not always being presented as a serious guy, because I do talk about almost everything and I don't hold back, because I know already that I'm basing what I say on facts and I have the evidence and the links to show and to prove. So, but I don't mind also how I'm being regarded as. Still, most of the people, they like to know what they're talking about and to present it in a nice way, so they are not being pushed aside.
So people need tools, and that's where I would say that the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space is useful.
Useful, yes.
Because, I think that if you I think everybody must do their own research. Yeah, don't just rely on what I've said or you've said. You know,
Agree. Yes.
we're fallible. We could be wrong.
Yeah.
This is the data that I have.
Yeah.
It's clear to me. I've satisfied myself, but you know, other people need to satisfy themselves.
And
Yeah?
just to cover ourselves, everything you hear in this video is supposedly. All right, go
Yes,
on.
it's speculation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not the quotations. Obviously,
Yes.
they're real.
Yes, exactly.
But anyway, you know, I think people can take the 5G space appeal as a scientific document, and with that, they can go to the local
Now,
representatives.
this is about 5G, but if
Yes,
there's
because
other
I think you need
subjects,
to. I think you need to confine. If you're going to go to your local representatives, I don't think it's wise to bring in all the rest of this.
Sure.
You know, I mean, if you have a personal relationship with somebody, okay, you know. But I think trying to prove this case, it's so big. You know, so I think you need to. If you're going to go locally, I think you need to limit yourself to 5G. Yeah, and in the international appeal, you have all the facts, all the health consequences. We have 122 references. We have a non-exhaustive list of the various laws that are contravened by this, etc., etc. So I think that is a very, very useful tool that you can take to your local representatives. However, I have to say that I have withdrawn my signature from the international appeal, and I do not recommend, now that the international appeal has effectively been merged with a third-party organization with very dubious associations, I do not recommend that people sign the appeal. Yeah? But it still remains a valid document
and you can use the
that people can use
references.
for their campaigning. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the
Yes, so I
references
think
are
that
real.
that's
The scientific documents are real. I mean, it's not. It's still
absolutely,
there. I mean,
absolutely.
those who do it in Hebrew in Israel, there's already a letter was made. I don't know, 8 months ago by me and some others, and that you can take down and send to your local representative or make an appointment and take this document to him or her, as well as other documents. I mean, it's already been prepared in Hebrew. Most people, I know that most people, Claire, are afraid. They are timid from what people may think of them, from how they are being presented, and how what people, well, not just the neighbors as well, you know, the family as well, not just the counsel or the counselor. It's someone has to, not someone, sorry, all of us, every one of us need to realize it's now or never. it's for our life. It's for your children's life. It's Claire, what Claire is sharing with us here, and other interviews I've done with others. It's real stuff, and I know that these things are coming since few years. Yes, they are accelerating. Yes, some things I don't know, and I also get surprised with the events, but you need to understand that it's not a big surprise what is happening. The depopulation agenda is real, and it's being written of for many years. So you need to start, let's say, with 5G. Don't be afraid, don't be timid. Know that you base what you say on facts, on research, on various experts who say the same thing. The fact that it doesn't come from your government or from your council doesn't mean it's wrong. It means they don't present this information, but it's your job and your right and obligation to life to present this data and to, how to say, stand on your own ground with force and with discipline and with insisting that you are right. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, unless it's a real discussion and you are being convinced, all right. But know that there's thousands of papers on the effects of radiation. Not one, not two.
Oh, this is absolutely
Thousands.
established, yeah. But I think it's really important to give people solutions, you know, and end on an uplifting note, yeah. because we are sovereign beings, and the most important thing we can do is say no, because this whole system relies on tacit consent. Yeah. So, for example, your electricity company will write to you and say, right, we're changing our terms and conditions. If we do not hear from you in 2 weeks' time, then we take it that you have accepted. Yeah. So this whole system runs on tacit consent. So the most important thing that anybody can do is say no. No, no, no. All day, every day. You do not need to be an expert to do that.
Yes, I agree.
Your heart tells you. And this is about the heart. It's actually, to me, it's not actually about the intellect. And this is why human beings are so powerful, because we rely on our intuition and the heart. Yeah. And when you look at this, excuse me, when you look at this and you feel with your heart that what is being attempted here is the elimination of everything that has ever been dear to you and you have held sacred. Yeah. So to me, the strongest image I have in my mind is when you've met a baby for the first time, and that baby has put their finger in your hand.
Oh.
Yeah. To me, that's like so symbolic of this whole thing. Yeah. This is about your identity as a human being and your relationship as a human being to every other human being and every living creature on this planet, every tree, every bee, every animal, every fish, the water. We're in relationship with everything. And this agenda is about eliminating your very humanity and eliminating all relationships and turning people, well, killing most of people, but turning the others into cyborgs who would no longer have those relationships, no longer have empathy or compassion or anything. So you need to see this with your heart and understand exactly what this is. You don't need to understand it with your intellect. Yeah? You just simply need to see this, and once you've seen it, then you can take action. And if you really do understand this, then you will take action.
I agree.
Now, I do see this as a spiritual process, and I find it very interesting that a lot of people who went into action to stop 5G are actually spiritual people. Yeah, but spiritual in a proper spiritual way, not this hijacked spirituality of Ervin Laszlo and Nicolya Christi. Yeah. Or Barbara Marx Hubbard, who appears to have been channeling demons. Yeah. So true spirituality, what that shows you is that we don't need to worry about the earth being in danger. I have total faith in the earth. The earth will survive everything. We don't have a problem with the earth. The earth does not have a problem with herself or with us. Yeah? If you're truly spiritual, then you totally trust everything. Yeah? And you totally trust yourself as well and your own intuition. And this is where we need to go. So it seems to me that in actual fact, this whole gigantic challenge, which is totally inescapable, it's unlike anything that we know of in the entirety of human history. Yeah? It's totally inescapable. It's so cosmic in proportions, yeah, that therefore, unlike all other problems, you can't avoid it, you can't move elsewhere, you can't protect yourself. There's no option but to face this. And when you first face it, you pass through this terror, this trial by fire of absolute terror of losing everything you've ever valued, yeah? But you do get to the other side of that. And when you get to the other side of that, you are totally free. Totally free, because it's a trial by fire. Now you don't feel fear anymore. What you feel is love, yeah? And this is why I always talk about the form and function of 5G. Because the form of 5G, and if you like, if you want to include this whole depopulation agenda, the form is one thing, but the function is something else altogether. And I think that the function is actually the awakening, because the awakening is not a collective thing.
Yeah.
The awakening is you.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
It's the lady out there. It's the neighbor. It's the cousin. It's the friend. You know, it's each individual. It's not a collectivized thing. If you collectivize this, which is what Nicolya Christi wanted to do with Stop 5G International, as soon as you collectivize this, you take people's power away and you give it to leaders and you open people up to censorship and manipulation.
Yeah.
So this, for me, this whole scenario is about personal responsibility and coming to your personal power and taking action in love, not in fear. Fear is the wrong direction. Fear is a low vibration. Love and joy are a high vibration. Now, when somebody confronts you with losing absolutely everything you've ever known, then you start to think, whoa, wow, you know, oh gosh, you know, I couldn't touch that tree anymore. I couldn't look at the leaves anymore. I couldn't look at those wonderful birds anymore. You go into love. You realize how much you value these things, because this is the meaning of your life. It's about relationship and love. So it takes you to personal authenticity and to action in love and joy. So the function of 5G, I find absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing experience. Yeah,
it is.
So you know, it's a process. And the other thing that I like to explain to people is that in the West, we tend to focus always. We tend to focus on the main objective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now the difference with the East is that they focus on the process
yes.
that takes you to that objective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas in the West, we tend to focus on the objective and we tend to not focus on the process. And what that means is that in the West, you'll look at the objective and you'll go, oh, it's a global agenda. Me? Stop that? Oh, no, it's impossible. No. But if you focus on the process of reaching that objective is millions of individuals, excuse me, each of whom says, oh, I think I'll knock on a door today. Oh, I think I'll go and speak to my local. Oh, I'll send an email. Yeah. So it's your little tiny actions,
Totally.
which in the aggregate means that this agenda is completely impossible. Yeah. So when you look at the process of opposing this, as opposed to the objective, then you see that it's completely possible. And you see actually that this process is wonderful because it brings you into contact with lots of other lovely people like you, Shai. And, you know, and it's actually something really lovely to do. So I want to end by recommending this book called Hominin, and it's written by Lewis Evans. And this book is, I believe this is a how-to manual for the awakening, actually. This book, this is written by Olga Sheehan's husband.
Ah, I interviewed her.
Yes, and Lewis is her husband.
Ah.
And this book is a thriller, and so it's like a geopolitical thriller, and to my mind it far outweighs John le Carré. It's a very intelligent geopolitical thriller. It's unputdownable. But what it does is it actually shows you how to move from where you are now to where you need to be with that authenticity, spontaneity, and love. Yeah? So this is why I really want to recommend this book to people, because it would show them exactly how you make that change, the
Wow.
change that is necessary, where you just act in total love and total authenticity and freedom, So,
Excellent.
anybody who wants to join, I'm not saying it's always easy,
No,
but
it's not.
it's
not.
quite a ride, it's quite a ride,
Wow, Claire. It's even this talk has been a ride for me as well. Thank you very much for that and for everything you do and all the information you put out and your care. I mean, anyone can see that what you do and what you say is out of care, and I know it's true for me as well, so maybe that's why I recognize it. But it's so important to wake up, to be active, to learn the things, the real things, the important things. It's so important. Not like what's on TV tonight. This is different type of importance.
Well, that's the function of 5G. It's the principle of care. It brings you to caring. And it's just so opposite. You see, the other thing that I think about all of this is that we're actually bringing in the new paradigm. Not the hijacked new paradigm of Ervin Laszlo, which seems to me a total distortion, but the real new paradigm, because the real new paradigm is the opposite of the old paradigm. So in the old paradigm, you'd have to get qualifications and be an expert before you ever spoke and opened your mouth. The old paradigm is just full of constraints, but the new paradigm is completely opposite. So in the new paradigm, I don't imagine systems, structures, organizations, plans, schedules, etc. I imagine spontaneity and a true expression of people's real identity. So as we campaign here, I think that we need to express the new paradigm. So which is why I find myself talking to you, not being an expert about what I'm talking about, which makes me feel very uncomfortable, But this is the new paradigm. You've just got to go with it, because I think if you, as you've said, if you really care, I think that comes across to people.
Yes, I agree.
And and I'm not taking responsibility for anybody else. I'm taking responsibility for me. Now I'm asking everybody else to take responsibility for themselves and stop giving the responsibility to other people.
Or to the state.
Or to the state.
Yes.
So
Also,
I think it's really time for all of us to really find ourselves, be authentic, take responsibility, take our power, and imagine the world that we want to have. So, this is why I just keep emphasizing it's so important not to do this in fear, but to do this in love and really visualize what it is that you want. And I see the earth as totally perfect, and without the chemtrails and all the rest of it, and with, a real connected humanity and people celebrating who they are, I love human beings, and I am totally for procreation of the human species. I'm totally pro-life,
Yeah, me too. I love human beings. I love you, Claire.
I love you too, Charlie.
And you were comparing between the West and the East, the target-driven or the process, and it's also male-female, the men are more targeted, target-oriented.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the new paradigm is supposed to be more feminine oriented.
Exactly. That's why I'm bringing it up, because we need to learn to take it day by day, and the process is what matters, not just necessarily the target or the aim or the goal. Thank you again for reminding us that. Yes, and I should say, well, I should have said it a couple of times already, but my wife reminding me to say it here and there. those of you who would like to support my work so I can do more of interviews like that, there's a link here, and I will put also in the description. You can go into my Patreon and press the link and support in any way you feel right to do so. Thank you.
And you really deserve support, Shai. I really like what you do, and I really like the way you do it as well. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Same here. I think you're lovely, and please continue, and we'll stay in touch, and you will send me links so I can put in the description, and I will upload this video now, which is quite long actually. I didn't expect it to be long. And but yeah, I think very good, and for many people it's important to listen to. I think so, because yeah, you said some really important things here in this talk. So thank you very much for that, and keep up the good work, as you say.
Thank you.
All the best, and God bless, and remember, love is stronger than fear, and God is greater than the rest of them. Thank you very much, Claire, for everything.
Take care.
You too.